Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari on this Friday, and we'll take a look this morning. I thought that all things economic, take a look at the economy, take a look at oil theft and the Naira value, which, as you know, most of us who are not even economists, but somehow just about everybody understands or knows the value of the Naira. Not everybody knows the official rate, which is cited at 426 Naira to the dollar, but the parallel market, or aka the black market rate, that is where you or I shall be getting it from should we need it desperately, then it is between 702 and 711 Naira to the dollar. Compare that, 711 Naira to the dollar as opposed to 426. Some people are getting it at 426. Other people, sorry, you're going to have to source it at 711. Okay, maybe I made too much about the Naira, about the Naira and the dollar because that's the currency part of it. But our guest, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, he's a political economist and former deputy governor of Central Bank of Nigeria. He'll help us understand all of this. And, the havoc it is wreaking with our lives and what, if anything, that we can do about it. Is it to just bear it, grin and bear it? Okay, let me say, first of all, good morning to our guest, Professor Kingsley Moghalu.
Good morning.
And thank you very much for making the time for us this morning. Prof, before we set sail, so to speak, we have, by way of a background report, something we put out on our news bulletin yesterday about oil theft, for instance. So we'll take that and then I'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Commandant of the NSCDC in Delta State is stepping up the fight against crude oil theft and pipeline vandalism, which is now at a worrisome level. The command launched a special tactical team codenamed Operation Show No Mercy to Vandals, which carries out sting operations in Warri and its environ. These 3 suspects were arrested with dual-purpose kerosene and automated gas oil.
Upon 24 hours into their operations, they discovered, busted, and arrested some suspects dealing illegally on petroleum products. So this is why we are here today, to tell the public that the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps is out not only to arrest, but to prosecute and jail everyone who is illegally dealing in the petroleum sector or within the petrol industry.
The raid on this illegal dump site close to Nanjakat in Uwe Council led to the arrest of these 2 suspects. Also, personnel of the Corps apprehended 2 suspects on the Warri-Saple Highway dealing in illegal refined AGO stored in drums. This woman allegedly deals in illegally refined products concealed in sacks and loaded in this vehicle. The driver escaped after citing the NSCDC personnel.
Today, we want to call on every meaningful Nigerians, Deltans to be precise, to avail the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps of every information that could lead to the arrest of these nefarious and barbaric activities of these suspects and hoodlums. It has caused the nation great loss and it has caused its citizens devastating pains.
According to the spokesman of the Corps in the state, all suspects will be charged to court after a thorough investigation and assured that the NSCDC is determined to chase out oil thieves and vandals in Delta State. Ikenna Amechi, TVC News, Warri.
Okay, thanks to Ken Amechi there for that report that went out earlier. And as I said, if you joined us at the top of the program, our guest is Professor Kingsley Moghalu, political economist and former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I dare add that he's also a politician. Okay, over to you, Prof. That story was just illustrating one of the aspects of our subject of discussion, oil theft. Could you put that in context? Everybody knows it's a bad thing, but in terms of the ills of, or what is ailing the economy, how important, how significant is that amongst the other things that are troubling our economy?
Yes, it's oil theft is hugely, hugely important. We lose, estimates say, about 300,000 barrels a day, to oil theft. If you calculate this at an average oil price of about $100, and we were having that for some time, I think now it's in the late 80s. But if you calculate and round up, losing $1 billion of revenue every month. Now, that's huge. $1 billion is about 700 billion Naira. We have an ASU strike. What are they asking for? That they should be paid 1.3 trillion in arrears owed to them based on agreements they had with the federal government. So if you stop oil theft for 2 months, that problem is wiped out. Nigeria is massively indebted. We are now borrowing to service the debt we already owe. Again, if you were not having this oil theft, we would be better able to balance our books and to be able to afford social services and to drive development in this country. So the oil theft problem is a huge problem. It is organized crime, and it says a lot about the state of the Nigerian state, that a full 1/3 of the natural resources on which it relies mainly for foreign exchange, 90%, is stolen. So in the short term, not to talk about the long term, but in the short term, the government must stop the oil theft if this country is to survive, because we are sinking deeper and deeper into very grave economic crisis. And it looks like the government has no source of revenue, because we have a revenue problem. But there are many sources of revenue, including the stolen revenue from the oil thefts.
Well, you just said, among other things, Prof, that the government has to stop this, has to devise a way to stop this. Even in relation to other aspects of our security, the economy and finances is one aspect of it. But only yesterday we were talking about the government's duty to stop all the criminality going around. And in recent times, as you know, we've been hearing more encouraging news. So we were asking the question yesterday that what is it that has brought about this will in government, seeing as we say where there's a will, there's a way. How can this, can the same be said in relation to this matter of oil theft, that government can do it once they indeed do have the will? Or is it one of those, how is it that all the criminals are beating us? They're beating the system, they're beating government, they're beating all the law enforcers?
Well, like you said, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
Some of us have always said that the problems we have with security in this country evidence an absence of political will to secure Nigerians. And it is not surprising that for a combination of reasons, we are now seeing the government trying to get more aggressive against terrorists by taking the fight to the enemy. You can't fight terrorism by fighting a defensive war. Always terrorists are attacking us, like the attacks in Abuja recently, which made very clear that if terrorists overrun Abuja, effectively the Nigerian state has collapsed. I suspect that there might have also been a lot of reactions of panic in the political class itself. People began to move motions of impeaching the president and things like that. Then, of course, the diplomatic community, everybody was worried for their safety. And I think people began to realize that we cannot continue to take excuses anymore. And so we began to see a stronger pushback. Let's hope it's sustained and it increases, because you have to simply wipe out terrorism. It's not, you cannot live with it. You know? I hope that the same thing applies to the oil theft crisis. We're beginning to see signs, again, of a pushback, but it is too early to say whether this will be sustained or whether it will be effective. But I believe that if the government is serious about stopping oil theft, they will stop it.
Okay, all right then. Again, so that sort of parallels what we were talking about yesterday with a bunch of experts that's concluded exactly what you've just said, that should the will exist, this would be a thing of the past. There is the way. We were saying that yesterday in relation to the military getting marching orders to do the needful, and apparently they now have got the marching orders. But Prof, let's move on, so to speak, to the issue of the value of the Naira, which most of us have come to learn that the way you know that is compare it with other global currencies, principally the dollar. And I was just saying at the top of the program that there is this thing we call in Nigeria the official rate, which is cited today at 426 Naira to the dollar. And then there's the either parallel or black market rate, whatever you want to call it, that is exchanging for between 702 and 711 Naira to the dollar. 426 to 711 to the Naira. Help us understand how our dollar really, I beg your pardon, how our Naira fell to that, that abysmally low level. I recall not exactly an eternity ago when Nigerians were complaining that the Naira is now 30 Naira to the dollar. This is a crisis. This is disgraceful. 30 Naira at the time. Now look at where we are. Prof, how did we descend to these depths?
Well, it's a combination of Nigeria relying mainly, if not only, on oil to earn foreign exchange, on crude oil. When you have a monoproduct economy in terms of foreign exchange earnings, the risk to which you expose your economy is that if anything goes wrong with the price of oil, it will affect the value of our legal tender, the currency, which is the Naira, because the oil sales are from where our foreign reserves are funded. And the main function of the foreign reserves is to safeguard the value of our currency, because it shows that we can pay for imports for several months, and that creates confidence in international trade. Where people begin to see the foreign reserves falling, and that happens where the price of oil goes low, or where the production of oil is very low, or where the price of oil may be high, but we are spending virtually all our income from it on subsidy, petroleum subsidy. Any of these circumstances creates a massive structural imbalance in the foreign reserves, and that affects confidence in the Naira. This is why the Naira has gone so low. Another major reason is weak economic management of the forex policy, foreign exchange policy by the central bank. Now, when I was a deputy governor of the central bank, between 2009 and 2014, I think we will remember that with the Naira was at about 160 to the dollar. We kept it within that range for 5 years. One of the reasons we were able to do so was to relax the ability of investors to bring in money and take out money. Mm-hmm. This also, I mean foreign investors, this creates confidence in the economy and brings in more inflows of foreign exchange and foreign investment. So the Naira responds to demand and supply forces. Where the demand for dollars is too much and there are not enough dollars, the price of the dollar relative to the Naira will continue to rise. That means the Naira is falling. That's what we have. Now we have these multiple exchange rates, the official rate and the parallel market rate. It's a reflection, again, of scarcity, and it's a reflection of bad economic management. Nigeria should harmonize its exchange rate policy. There should not be multiple exchange rates for different things. It creates exposure for arbitrage. Some people will get that money at 426 or 28 to the dollar, and they will go and sell it in the black market at 710 Naira. This will always happen once you create multiple exchange rates. So the CBN has been trying too hard in the wrong way to control, the price of the Naira in the forex market. There is too much state control, and it is creating room for a lot of arbitrage, a lot of fraudulent dealings in the market, and creating pressure on the central bank itself. So there are many reasons why we are where we are. It's a combination of things.
Thank you, Prof. You see, the way you explain it, when you say central bank is trying perhaps too hard in the wrong direction, we also hear that sometimes you can't leave our national currency to the vagaries of, market forces. You are in a much better position to tell us if that is a truism or not. And so from time to time, government will intervene in the matter. Right now, it is what it is. Yes. I don't think government can intervene. But as you are considering what I've just said, you must have heard, Prof, that on Wednesday, the regulators in Kenya decided to take subsidy off the price of their fuel altogether, resulting in what they are calling an unprecedented high of somewhere around, when you translate it to the Naira, maybe around 600 and something Naira for a liter of fuel. Could that happen to us?
It could and absolutely should happen in Nigeria. Let me actually explain what I mean. We cannot continue to subsidize imported petroleum with 4, 5, 6 trillion naira. Make nonsense of our fiscal management. Think that all Nigerian government and fiscal policy exists for is to subsidize the price of imported petrol. And we know there's a lot of fraud. We know there is a lot of fraud in the subsidy regime. So we need to remove the subsidy to save Nigeria's economy. It will increase the price of fuel. But what do? I have recommended that there should be a very significant investment in public transportation, in combination and collaboration between the federal and state governments to have subsidized transport systems throughout this country that are effective and can serve poor people. It will not take you more than 500 billion naira. Compare that to spending 6 or 7 trillion naira every year on subsidy. You cannot be subsidizing the fuel for the jeeps of Nigeria's big men. There's no need for that. All you have to do is to find a way to shield the poor from the impact of removing the petroleum subsidy. And then you go ahead and remove it. Because the problem with the Nigerian economy is that there is too much state control.
Because I was going to ask.
The market is dysfunctional.
Okay. Because I was going to ask, against what you've just said, that once you shield, protect the poorest in our society, then you can go ahead and do the needful. I was going to ask the economic management thing of Nigeria, how efficient you think it is for us to look towards what you've just suggested, in any appreciable length of time, that they will get together and do that thing, shield the poor, and then go ahead. And by the way, while I'm on this particular issue, a lot of people put a lot of hope in a private refinery that's coming up, the Dangote refinery. Maybe you could throw in your comment there too and think and tell us if this is misplaced or indeed it is good. It is a useful hope that when the Dangote refinery comes up, things will differ radically.
Well, the Dangote refinery will be very helpful from the point of view of the supply and availability of fuel, because we also have a lot of artificial scarcities. But it will not make the price of fuel cheaper, because it has to be economically sustainable. The Dangote refinery will operate in a free zone, which makes it an international company. So it will be, technically, it's like importing fuel into Nigeria, but it is inside Nigerian territory. But that territory, legally, is a free trade zone. So it will help in terms of supply and the availability of petrol, yes. But it will not really make fuel cheaper.
Okay. So the mere fact that it's homegrown, so to speak, we have the crude, we have the refinery, which they currently are sending out to be done and then bring it back in. You're saying, well, because it's in an economic free zone, things are not going to be radically different, because it's going to be just as if they were sending it out still and then bringing it back in.
But the difference is that the supply will be far more efficient.
Okay. Not necessarily cheaper, but efficient, more efficient, if I understand you properly.
Yes, we have to operate at the economic price of petrol. With the current subsidy, what you see is a lot of smuggling. Nigeria's petrol is cheaper than all the neighboring West African countries. Are those countries necessarily richer than Nigeria or better off than Nigeria? Why is it that people will smuggle petrol from Nigeria to Niger or Chad or Benin Republic? Because they will make profits there. So this distortion by a false posture that we are trying to protect the poor by subsidizing the price of petrol. If you allow petrol to be traded by several operators, eventually the price will fall. This is what happened with GSM. So we keep trying to create all these false narratives, and we keep ruining our economy. We say that we are trying to save the poor by subsidizing petrol, and a lot of crooks are getting rich from petroleum subsidy because they're submitting false claims, or they're making false claims about how many liters of petrol Nigerians consume every day. So you're just aiding criminality and corruption. Once you have all these government attempts to control the price of things, it creates a lot of corruption. And invariably, the poor people will suffer.
Now, I'm sure you must have given this question, following from what you've just concluded with. You must have given it a lot of thought, since I don't know if it still is good, but there was a time when you aspired to, vie for the highest office in the land. The question that you referred to earlier of government doing its job of shielding the poorest among us, shielding the poor so that other things can be done. I wonder how optimistic that you are that those that are at it are doing the best that they can do. Let me put it that way. Not just a credible job, but the best that they can do.
Well, the fact of the matter is that Nigeria's economy is not effectively managed, it's not well managed, and it's not competently managed. I think that as we go into 2023, the whole economic posture of a government matters a lot. And a lot of times it starts from the top. So depending on who comes into Nigeria as the next president, our hope is that they will pay a lot more focused attention on the management of Nigeria's economy. Appoint a very competent team of economic managers. Have an economic philosophy that is clear. Have a consistent policy that derives from that philosophy that is also clear. If you notice, recently, one of the presidential candidates, I think it was Atiku Abubakar, spoke at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, bringing out his own economic vision. That, and then we know that Bola Tinubu has a date with the same group sometime in October. We know that Peter Obi also has a date with the same group. So it will be very interesting to hear their economic plans and how they actually intend to turn around the Nigerian economy. But when Atiku made his presentation, a debate began because Atiku is clear and unapologetic that the government has very little business in business. That is his own position. Someone like Tinubu is known to believe more in a governed economy, a stronger role for the state in managing the economy towards a predetermined place. These are different economic philosophies, and they should be thoroughly debated and assessed by Nigerians. Every economy that has done very well has tended to respect the market principles. When the hand of the government is too heavy, distortions come into the market. But the government cannot be totally absent from the market. Sometimes it may have to intervene. That is, part of it. For example, there were a lot of privatizations done in Nigeria, but we know, like the privatization of the power sector, but we have seen that they have essentially failed. So is it because the private sector economy is not? No, it's not that. It's because certain fundamentals were not taken care of in that privatization. And the companies were not necessarily sold to the most competent economic managers or business managers. Nigeria is a rent-seeking economy where state assets are disposed based on man, no man. Those who have connections with the government buy them, but they may not be competent to run those assets. And so you begin to have asset stripping. So the problems of the Nigerian economy are very, very intensely political. I want to emphasize this.
And I think that sort of explains, at least, no matter how hazy it would be to me, a non-expert, part of what you've just said that earlier, which is to the effect that Nigeria's economy is not competently managed. Because I was going to ask you that, look, economic experts like yourself, they abound in this country. We don't have a shortage of them. So I think the Office of the Vice President is supposed to be in charge of the economy along with some other organs. And so I was going to ask, so what is, until you said that it is intensely political, I was going to ask, what therefore is the problem when we are surrounded by experts? It's like water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Apologies to whoever.
Let me tell you.
Sorry. Oh, you didn't hear me?
Yeah. Let me tell you what the problem is.
Okay.
The problem is the political class in Nigeria and the political leadership in Nigeria. The political leadership themselves are not economically competent. And no country can make progress beyond the competence or incompetence of its political leaders. If you have technocrats and economic experts, but they're making recommendations that remove opportunities for corruption for politicians. In a country like Nigeria, many of those political leaders will sit on those recommendations. They'll sit on those ideas because they have removed opportunities for rent and rent collection by them. When I say rent, I mean rent, oil rents, for example.
Economic rent.
You know? Yes, you know, rent is just an economic term used for people acquiring the resources of the state for private purposes using political power. So until you have political leaders who are economically knowledgeable and competent,
not to mention patriotic,
they appoint the right technocrats, then you're on the right track. And they have the political will to listen to that economic advice. But they themselves have enough knowledge to interrogate that advice. Then you're making progress.
Okay. Okay, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, we've got to take a break now. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a jiffy, and then we'll continue this conversation. And later, a little later, we shall be able to add phone calls. Stay with us, please. Okay, welcome back. And our guest this morning is Professor Kingsley Moghalu. He's a political economist. He's a former deputy governor of Central Bank of Nigeria. And, okay, I understand that, I just got the body language. I think the prof wasn't hearing what I was saying, and I hope we can sort that out so that he can hear us, because we do need to continue the conversation with him. But I was just saying, in case you just joined us, he's already very well known in the country, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, political economist and former deputy governor of Central Bank of Nigeria. And our subject, our scope of discussion is on oil theft, Naira value, and the state of Nigeria's economy. And he's commented on oil theft and the impact of it and what we would benefit if we had the will to take that particular problem out. Naira value, he's explained how it is that some people are getting it at 426 to the dollar, some people 711, and he said it's a situation to be deplored when you have different exchange rate for different shall we say, categories, and this will always happen. I don't know if it's round-tripping that they call it, but the professor explained that when you have this kind of a situation, there will always be those who will get it at 426, turn around in the market, sell it at 700, at 10 Naira, and just pocket the rest. And he's also been speaking about rent-seeking, rent-taking, and that is a thing that exists, and quite frankly, if you were to confront the situation in Nigeria's economy and all these loopholes, oil theft and all of that, it was his opinion, as you would have heard, that once you begin to make moves to sort that problem out, fix things, that he wouldn't be surprised if people didn't sit on it, because you're actually blocking an inflow to them. That's where we got to, and I hope the professor can hear me now. I've been, bidding for time, hoping that he can hear me. Professor Moghalu, can you hear me? Okay, so that's the answer to that. But I don't know. I was going to say in the meantime, maybe we could take some calls, but maybe not. We'll just stay on it. It's an interesting thing, because if you're just joining us, the professor also seemed critical of the kind of people that are brought in to help manage the economy. He talked about competence, of the competence that is required of such individuals. And it didn't seem like he thought that there was very much of that around in our economy. And in fact, he feels that it's being incompetently managed. No doubt the present administration will take exceptions to that view, perhaps. But then the professor, he's a political economist, and he's calling it the way he sees it. And it's interesting to hear from him. He also told us, just by way of feeling a bit before we can get Professor Moghalu back online. He also told us that all of this is to be expected given the construct we have on the ground. The mere fact that we are suffering doesn't mean that there is the political will to do that which is needful, and much is to be regretted there. He explained that it's because if you go ahead and do that, there's so many rent seekers and takers that they will become impoverished, and we can't have that. He explained that the long-expected Dangote refinery that will be coming up, yes, it'll make things a bit better, but people have to remember, the Prof counseled that it still is going to be at an international, the business will be conducted as if it was an international entity because it's in the free trade zone, and that's the way it is. So people can't think like some might have that, well, now that we, maybe a bit like, now that my mother, has a business, has a buka business, I don't need to worry about food anymore, about buying food. I can always be eating from my mother's, bukateria. He said, not so, not really so. It's going to be on an international business best practices convention. It has to be market rate, which is what we're talking about. And the scary part was that you might have heard as well that in Kenya, the price per liter of fuel, as of yesterday, had gone up to, I forget the exact figure now, but it's in excess of 600 Naira to the liter. And I'd asked the professor if that could happen to us. In fact, that's what's led to some of the observations that he made. He said it definitely could. Well, we hope not, touch wood. We hope it doesn't, but he said it definitely could. Could you imagine a situation where Nigeria, is paying 600 Naira to the liter? But that was just in relation to Kenya. Kenya bit the bullet and did it. Some people have said to me that Kenya is not an oil-producing country. Well, the Prof has just explained that even you, the oil-producing country, it's not as if there still won't be challenges. All of this is by way of waiting to get back Professor Kingsley Moghalu, who is our guest this morning and has been with us from the very top of the program, looking at the subject matter that you can see at the bottom of your screen. So we're waiting for the Prof, and I guess we'll have to take a break now, another break, pending when we get him. Well, I hear that Prof might indeed be back. Professor Moghalu, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you
okay.
now.
Hallelujah. Thank God for that. Prof, it's a gloomy picture, but I have a feeling that not too many experts are discouraged. In other words, it's a fixable problem as long as we do some of the things that you criticized, one of which was the efficiency of and knowledge, technical knowledge, expertise of those who actually will manage the economy. You actually said that it remains to be seen who the incoming president will bring in and what ideas they will bring in. You briefly categorize some philosophies, but it seems to me that you think that this is not an impossible problem to manage. All that is required is the political will to do the right thing. Did I get that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. I think you're correct. Nigeria's economy, as difficult as it is, as depressed as it is on every sphere, inflation, unemployment, debt, the forex problem, the productivity issue, manufacturing as a ratio of GDP is less than 10%. That's very low. But all of these problems are not impossible to solve. I'll give you the example of Zambia. When Hakainde Hichilema became president a year ago, Zambia was in dire economic straits. But today, a year later, they are doing far better. One of the reasons is because confidence returned to the economy. The second is actually the technocratic competence in managing the problems. So there are very, very few situations that are completely irredeemable. So I do have hope that Nigeria's economy can return to better days if it is more competently managed.
But as we are now, everybody, in fact, back in the day, this is about 30 years ago, musicians, local musicians even made a song about it, that everybody is shouting that the economy is bad. And this was 30 years or so ago. It was in popular high life tunes at the time. And,
yes.
And here we have it. You said that government's real business, to the extent that government has any business in business, would be to ensure protection, shielding of the poor. I'm guessing you don't think they've done a very good job of that aspect of their economic function.
No, it's not just shielding the poor, but actually helping the poor people to create wealth for themselves by creating opportunity for them. How do you create this opportunity? It is not only by just leaving the poor on handouts, because that is an incentive for people to just continue to be poor and to depend on the state. If you go to many European states or the United States, you will see that they have reformed their welfare system. Now, the social security for the aged, for older and elder citizens, is a different matter. That should be an entitlement that when people are old in this country, they have some support. And this is one of the reasons we have a lot of corruption in this country, because nobody is sure that in their old age, they will ever be taken care of. So they say, let me take care of myself now, when I have this opportunity. So the point I'm trying to make is that how do you create opportunity for poor people to begin to create wealth for themselves? China, over 40 years, took more than 700 million people from poverty into the middle class. That is what is called economic transformation. And that's what Nigeria should be focused on. You do that by, one, making sure that poor people have education. The investment in the educational system in this country is very low. The political priority attached to it is very low. When people have skills, then they can create jobs for themselves. Then you make sure that they have access to capital. And that capital does not have to be loans, because interest rates are high and it's very difficult to take loans and be able to repay it, especially in a time like this when the central bank is raising interest rates to combat inflation. So what do? You have other kinds of capital, equity capital. People can be given money to start new business by venture capital firms. Those venture capital firms, I have always proposed, can be created by the government, but run by private sector people. So that it's not man, no man. You have to meet the economic conditions because the firms have to make a profit. They give you money to start a new business after ensuring that you have the skills. And then they become part owners of your business.
Okay.
In order to hold you to account as to how the business is managed for some years, okay, after which the venture capital company can exit, and okay, the business becomes yours totally. This is another type of capital. It's not always about borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and then central bank is forming intervention fund for everything under the sun. It doesn't work. Eventually, people begin to see it as AWUF money. It's my share. So okay, many of them, like the Anchor Borrowers Program, we know that many of those loans are not being paid back. What is the central bank's balance sheet? Okay. This is what I talk about economic competence and economic management based on vested political interests. That's what's killing this country.
That is one model. This is one model that you've just outlined. But what about schemes like that this administration has worked on, schemes like trader money and the like that we hear about. Are those things that, where you smiled? That's part of the answer, Prof. Maybe, let me have your opinion on those kind of ideas that seem to me to be trying to approach, somewhat the direction that you have outlined. Trader money, for example.
Yes. Well, let me explain something. All these schemes, trader money, social investment program, they may be well-intentioned. But if they have been successful, why is there so much poverty and unemployment in Nigeria today? Poverty and unemployment have continued to rise over the past several years. It tells you that there is something wrong. So we need to move to a much more efficient and well thought through model. And many people also feel that some of these schemes become very active close to elections. And then you say, is this politics or is this poverty alleviation or wealth creation? So I think there needs to be a much more structured, private sector driven, but perhaps working in collaboration with the government, a way of pumping money that is well targeted. Many of the people that are receiving the social investment program handouts and all of that, we don't have transparency in these things. We don't know who's receiving these things. We just hear claims that the government has given out so and so billions. Then you go around to the place. Many people are saying, what are you talking about? Where the money now? I never see them.
Indeed.
So there's a lot more efficiency, a lot more transparency that should be brought into approaches for creating wealth or giving opportunities to poor people in this country to create wealth.
Indeed. Now, Prof, finally now, on a lighter note, considering what we've been talking about, we've been speaking about the economy and the woes of the economy and the poverty level. Yet, if you look at social media, maybe this is a cultural aspect, if you look at social media, the amount of opulent parties that are happening all over the country say anything but poverty. You see the grandeur, you see the opulence, you see the generosity, and people begin to wonder, listening to this conversation that we're having and also seeing some of those videos, are these people talking about the same society? What do you think is responsible for that, where this pauperization, shall we say, of the polity, is not reflected in our social values and habits and culture?
Yes, thank you very much. We live in a country that is characterized by an unproductive elite that engages in reckless consumption. There is no real, let me put it this way, the private sector in Nigeria drives about 90% of the GDP, yes. But if you look very carefully at the Nigerian economy, you will see that apart from small businesses and small traders, many of the bigger businesses and elite always depend on the government for one thing or the other. Even the small trader, government's economic policy affects them. The problem in Nigeria is government. And when people make easy money, whether from stolen oil crude oil, or whether from forex that they got at official rates and sold in the black market, or whether from just contracts that many of them do not even perform, you find the tendency to conspicuous consumption. So we need a leadership in Nigeria that begins to focus on the matter of values. Not that people should not enjoy their money. Mm-hmm. People should. If your money is hard-earned, why not? If you want to throw a party, throw a party. I don't have a problem with that. But we want a productive economy. That's the bottom line. We cannot be living large. A small elite should not be living large when 100 million Nigerians, 50% of Nigerians, are living in extreme poverty.
I want to thank you.
Nigeria is actually a poor country.
I got that impression.
That's the truth.
But you wouldn't know it to look at its parties. But you've explained that. Say, AWOOF is AWOOF.
Oh, well.
Thank you very much, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, political economist, former Deputy Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria. Really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you. Indeed, that's
Thank you for
our pleasure. That's our program this morning. Something of a thought-provoking conversation with Professor Kingsley Moghalu. Maybe there's much that we can reflect over as we go. He gave it to us from his point of view. No doubt you have your point of view. His is an expert point of view. And it is what it is. That's our program today. Please join us on Monday for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folari. Do have a great weekend.